Hello Proponomics people, and welcome to the Sunday supplement summary from the supplement on the 12th of May 2024, which was entitled One Domino at a Time. So that title was a reference to the fact that we had a Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee meeting last week, and in that meeting they voted to hold the interest rate at 5.25%, the base rate of interest, and they voted, the 9 members on the committee, 7 in favour of holding and 2 in favour of cutting by 0.25%. There was 1 vote to cut last time and 8 votes to hold, so this is progress. But as I said in the title, one domino at a time. So what will happen in the next meeting, let's see. But here's a summary of that supplement. So the second member may be a little bit of a surprise, it'd be fair to say. I think Dave Ramsden, Deputy Governor for Markets, he crossed the floor, as they call it, deciding to vote to cut. Why? Well, perhaps he's conscious that historically the bank have waited too long to act in these situations, and not just the Bank of England, almost all central banks really. They start cutting too late when they've been through a hiking cycle, and then we have a sharp pullback or drawdown. Certainly feels like a risk in the US at the moment, and although the UK economy is going really well at the moment, could be more of a risk. But do you want policy to ease when the economy is already doing really well? Because what does a really good economy create? It creates natural inflation, and of course inflation is still not under target. But there we go. So Dave Ramsden voting to cut, perhaps on the back of the fact that historically we've waited too long. Now, economic growth data has to feature right in the headlines as well, because everybody, even the bullish people out there, or the people who certainly try and call it as they see it, like me, with no agenda, called 0.4 to 0.5% growth for Q1. I was well ahead of any other forecaster when I made those predictions. People were saying 0.2% growth, we're limping. You can understand why they were saying that. They were looking backwards at Q3 and Q4 of 2023. But I was looking at what's happening in real time in the economy, in terms of wage increases, in terms of consumer sentiment and people feeling more positive, and most importantly, in terms of the PMIs and how well the businesses are doing, especially in the services sector, which is obviously our strongest, largest and most important sector by far. And the PMIs in Q1 were telling us things are going along okay, thanks very much. And I missed the mark to the downside because actually we had a print of plus 0.6, which when annualised, because it was actually 0.62 or something like that, when annualised that works out as 2.5% GDP growth a year. Sad state of affairs really that I've got so much excitement in my voice at the thought of 2.5% GDP growth per year. No one really thinks that's sustainable anymore, but on the back of a pretty flat year last year, on the back of getting a lot of things out of the way, and on the back of, let's always remember, this is real GDP. It's adjusted for inflation. What was inflation in Q1? It averaged about 3.5%, right? Instead of what inflation averaged in Q1 2023, where it averaged about 10.5%. So the figures are only adjusted downwards by inflation. Wage growth vastly outstripping inflation. Services inflation itself outstripping inflation because prices coming down. What does this mean? Businesses are doing better. GDP increases apart from anything else. So then I went into the macro deep dive and had a look at the construction PMI because there was a great print of 53 for April, which was a big surprise, but not to do with house building in the resi sector, I'm afraid. It's to do with larger amounts of civil engineering and new private commercial work. So great that these things are being invested in, good for the economy, but not helpful for the housing market, just so we know. Also looked at the RICS house price balance report, which I love to look at. Talks a lot about where things are in the market right now and also expectations for the next 12 months. And the vast majority, 2/3 of the survey are expecting prices to go forward over the next 12 months now. That's the RICS prediction. They're a famously bearish bunch. So if 2/3 of them think things are going forward, I'm pretty convinced the house prices are going to be going forward. How are they doing at the moment? They see it as a pretty level and flat playing field. Not really in concert with what Chris Watkin has been saying, who collects all the real-time property data stats from the market, from what's happening on the portals, and prices have moved forward in the last few months, and we'll see that play out in the ONS data as we get to settlement of those deals later in sort of June, July, August, September. So this is stuff we're going to see in sort of 6 months' time. But I think we've seen a decent increase in the market on that basis. And so I think, overall at the moment, my prediction at the start of the year, 4 to 6% growth, one of the top predictions at the time. Lots of people were saying a year of shrinkage. it's arguable whether 2023 was down or not. But actually, the ONS says minus 2.2%, and I think we have to use the ONS as the Bible because they do have all the data on that one. And people like Halifax and Nationwide obviously have a restricted amount of data, and that's why they printed two different figures. I think Halifax was plus 1.7 for 2023, Nationwide was minus 1.8. So tells you probably market didn't do a lot, but ONS minus 2.2. So let's accept that as the answer. So growth by sector in the services in the growth report, obviously, as I say, services going really, really well, production doing well, construction not so well in Q1, but it looks to be warming up for Q2, and services doing very well in Q2 as well. What I found strange as I got into the Bank of England report was the Bank of England is still forecasting 0.2% growth for quarter 2 2024. Now, those who are observant will have noticed we're about halfway through quarter 2 and they've only just published the report. So with sort of 40 or 50% of it out of the way before the report's publication, you would think they might be able to do something a bit more accurate. I can't see any way we haven't grown 0.2% just in April alone, to be honest with you. And I think, again, 0.5 to 0.6 is where we're going to be. We might even hit a 0.7, but there's also quite a likelihood that quarter 1 figures might get revised upwards yet further. We'll see. But services PMIs are roaring even more than they were in Q1 at the moment. Of course, we've got another half a quarter to go, so anything can happen, and we can't guarantee what's going to happen. But 0.2 looks like a terrible dart to throw from the Bank of England, and this changes things dramatically, because if the economy is growing, the first argument will be, why do we need to cut rates if the economy is doing fine in an environment of normal rates, which is what this is effectively being called. So let's see what happens. It's a bit of a difficult one. How many members, therefore, are going to have to cross the floor? Next meeting, we've got 3 members who are definitely in this environment not going to vote to cut rates. No way in God's green earth. Right? 3 of those external members of the committee that are not on the dovish side. They want to keep rates higher. No way it's happening. Could see a 6-3 vote to cut in theory, but I can't see it on the back of all of this news. I think we're still going to see probably 6-3 in favour of holding, or maybe even 7-2. But I'll have to do some more predictions nearer the time because things will change. We've got several releases before then. We've got 2 inflation releases. We've got another growth release. We've got 2 unemployment releases before that meeting happens. So let's see what happens on those. So we're now sort of 5 and a bit weeks away from the next Bank of England meeting. Jobs figures will be big. Inflation obviously will be big. We know inflation is going to print 2.x% for April when it comes out next week. How much should that influence things? Not a lot really, because energy prices have come right down. Electricity prices are fluctuating again quite significantly at the moment. They've sharply swung to the upside in the past couple of weeks. Nothing like the swings we were seeing in the middle of the sort of Ukraine-Russia sponsored massive movements in energy prices, but still significant volatility. So we're not sure where we'll be in the July price cap at the moment. It'll be interesting to see. But overall, the economy looks more resilient than previously thought, even despite what looked like some of the best efforts of some of the idiots who've been in charge over the last 5 years to really cock it up. They haven't succeeded, and luckily that beast is resilient. It doesn't sit there and worry too much about what everybody's saying. It just gets on with business. And luckily people are getting on with business. Wages are growing in real terms at a fantastic rate. We're moving forward from where we were last year. Does this help people who are in no better off or worse off than they were in 2019? No. Does this help the Conservative Party? Well, it doesn't harm them, right? But really, if Sunak and Hunt are sitting in number 10 and 11, patting each other on the back, saying how well the UK economy is doing, and thinking that's going to swing many votes to the next election, I'm not sure it is. But then, of course, we've got some polling saying there might be a hung parliament, which seems strange when some previous polling was indicating there was going to be one of the biggest wins in history, and they were talking about Canada 95 and things where the Conservative Party there went down to 4 seats and all this crazy sort of stuff. As usual, polls can't make up their mind. What happened in the council elections is a better proxy than what people say in terms of opinion polls. Will the Conservatives run a better campaign than Labour? I think, trying to be objective, they have done. Over the past number of elections, they've had the better spin people. In fact, since Campbell and Mandelson haven't been actively involved in the Labour Party, I don't think their dogs in the fight, I don't think their fuel on the fire has been anywhere near as good as the Conservative Party. Of course, they've had a few that have backfired. Strong and Stable looked like a bit of a giggle, and Theresa May, limped over the line against Corbyn, had to have that agreement with the DUP. it wasn't ideal. But there'll be more on all of this as we approach the election. Thanks.